PRSA New York hosted an event featuring Rebecca Blumenstein, the Deputy Managing Editor of the New York Times. Doug Simon, CEO at DS Simon Media, moderated the event. In this section, Rebecca discusses her role as Deputy Managing Editor, finding balance in the Times' reporting, and how the outlet has successfully adapted to the digital age.
Well, first of all, it's great to be here, and I appreciate so many of you coming out on a weeknight, so look forward to the conversation. I came to the Times 2 years ago from the Journal, and it wasn't an easy decision, but at that point, the Times realized that they wanted to rejuvenate and revamp their business and tech coverage, and brought me on board to do that. Being brought in at the deputy managing editor level was a pretty rare thing to do, but it was a great opportunity, and I think the Times has always had very in-depth business coverage, but business has become what I call the everything story, and needed to kind of reinvest, fill positions, bulk out tech, bulk out econ coverage, and that's what I've done. But I'm a deputy managing editor, so I'm on what's called the masthead, and I do all kinds of things, hiring, events roll up into me. I was doing security for much of the past year, and then in the past 6 months, the business revamp went kind of faster than we thought in some respects. And we have a very strong business editor, Ellen Pollack, former editor of Business Week, and so I moved over to run digital. So now that's what I'm doing day to day, hour by hour.
Great. And this might be a silly question, but is there such a thing as a typical day?
Yeah, there is. I mean, there is, getting up in the morning and looking at the app and seeing if, anything is off, looking at your emails, seeing what's happened overnight, making my way into work. I live in New Jersey, as you know, and there's a meeting at 9:30, a news meeting in the morning. We do allow outsiders to come if any of you ever want to attend. And we're increasingly trying to make it a discussion
Is
about.
It in a big room? Because I think.
And we gather the people working, from various desks on stories. We're trying to make it as much of a digital discussion as possible about what's driving the day, not about what's going to be in the print newspaper at the end of the day. Then, of course, meetings. We all have meetings on various initiatives, things. We've been making a lot of progress on search and audience and using data and analytics in what we're doing. There's more to do all the time, and we're bobbing and weaving, of course, on the news. And when news happens, figuring out which desk should do it, getting it up very quickly to establish ourselves in search, and building it out as fast as possible, doing live briefings. And there's another, at 4:30, there's another news meeting where we kind of see how we've done, and what's, there are decisions made about print, and things kind of keep happening the whole day.
What's the balance between proactive stuff that you're seeking out to cover and reactive stuff like Trump's latest thing? I mean, there's obviously a mix of events that are happening,
yeah.
Shootings, et cetera. How do you balance that?
We like having a mix of what we call enterprise and news. We've learned that obviously the Trump tax story we published last night, that's a big piece of enterprise journalism. There's not, that's kind of the biggest investigative story. But there are, other kinds of enterprise stories off the news. A lot of reporters like working on projects, and the Times, our brand, is really known for in-depth reporting. But we are now really trying to do it quickly, and we are realizing that when we do stories that are very much in the moment, kind of pegged to the news, around the news, that it's a pretty unique combination of being both timely and authoritative. Like on the Lion Air crash, for example, we launched a live briefing. We probably did globally 20 to 30 stories over 3 or 4 days. Updating the briefing, handing it out, around the world, basically, from New York to Hong Kong to London, and over the course of those days got 10 million page views. So we're doing a combination of announced news, and of course we love breaking news. You know, you look at Mike Isaac's coverage of Uber, or any number of things that stories that we break in Washington. So there's following a terrible thing like the Denver shooting, but also breaking news and making news and enterprise, and you want to have a good mix of that.
Sure, and some big picture things for you guys, because you announced earnings today.
Yeah.
And that was a very positive thing. Paid subscriptions, 4.5 million. 3.5 million of those are digital. This first quarter, you had 223,000 customers for news, crossword, and cooking apps. And that's a 29% increase. Online advertising up 19%. So clearly, old media is dead, right? Is that the conclusion? It seems to be thriving by changing in all these different areas. What are some of the implications of that for people that practice PR, that are communicators?
I mean, I think that the message is that it's, boy, it's changing fast. I mean, 2 years ago, I would say the digital native BuzzFeed and, Recode and a lot of the kind of, digital, I guess, native sites seem to have the momentum, and they've really been struggling lately, obviously, because of the I wouldn't call it a failure, but the struggles of digital advertising. And if you don't have a subscription model, you are really, really having a tough time. So we were fortunate enough to have switched to a subscription model, and I think that one very positive thing is that consumers broadly, and this is post 2016 perhaps, but I think also with what's happened in terms of questions about the platforms and the integrity of Facebook and Google, is that people are realizing they need to pay for quality, and they need to pay for news that they trust. On social media, I don't know about you guys, but whenever there's a big breaking story, sometimes half of what's on social media is right, half of what's on social media is wrong, and so kind of, our proposition is, if you pay for a subscription, we will be a trusted news source for you, and so it's been interesting to watch the brands, the established brands, kind of wrest some momentum back. And I would say I'm on the board of the Columbia Journalism Review. It's been very gratifying. People appreciate journalism right now as a fundamental part of our democracy. People are supporting the Columbia Journalism Review. They're supporting the Washington Post. They're supporting the Wall Street Journal. They're supporting the New York Times. And clearly, I think that consumers are also getting more used to paying for, people. There are 110 million subscribers to Netflix. So the Times at 4.5 million is pretty good, but we have some ways to go. To your second good question about ways that you can feed into this, I think it's depending on what you do, just good to really get to know what we do and how it relates to where you are. I mean, it's kind of hard to cold call people a lot, but like we have a climate team. We're one of the only publications that has an entire team dedicated to climate. We have a gender vertical, and if you have stories we have a whole business staff, and I find sometimes that people are like, well, how do I pitch stories? Well, just read the paper, read the stories. The best thing to do is to contact the reporters who are writing them, and kind of in terms of being, like today we launched a parenting site, parenting.nyt.com, and that's going to be a big push. We're going to eventually, we hope to make that subscription kind of like cooking, and that's just something we're going to be devoting resource and attention to. And
maybe for some quick perspective, this group here, how many of you have worked on a story, say, in the last year or two that touched on parenting or family, like quick show of hands? Right, so this is top of mind. So now there's a whole new outlet that's almost created to reach people, and I would guess that you're looking for really good stories within
That's
that
right.
space.
The editor is Jessica Gross, and Yeah.
Cut and paste.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there. And yeah, this is. Thank you. Make my job easy. But what's really interesting and cool, thank you, is that it's evidence-based, and we've looked at the market and feel like there is a need for quality information. I am a parent of teenagers. It is not geared to teenagers. It is more for the younger ages. But the first story today was pretty edgy. It was about how the site is not, as policy, going to call natural childbirth because it's pejorative and kind of controversial. And so.
What do you call it?
Well, I think just childbirth, because that still gets to be a little judgmental as well. But you'll have to read the story. But anyway, that's just an example. If you go up there, there's like a world of stories. There's a we also have a smarter living, section. But parenting, I'm just using this as an example. Read it. You could probably send, Jessica, most people are first name dot last name at nytimes.com. That's exactly how the journal works. And just, people are looking for examples. They're looking for real people. And that's sometimes how things happen.